This is day 21, and today is practice day. We are going to build another dashboard today, and we'll touch on how XLOOKUPs can help us a little with that. You're helping a non-profit, and they're running an environmental campaign around the country. So they're actually in the middle of wrapping up a few big initiatives, like a national survey. So they want to understand what the public thinks about their environment, and also a community event. So this is where people volunteer to plant trees, pick up litter, and educate others. So the team behind this want to see the link between the public sentiment and the real world action in taking care of the environment. So, in other words, they want to see what we've done so far globally to take care of our environment. And also, they want to understand what the public truly think about that. Now, the data they've collected around this is across so many spreadsheets and it's coming from different sources. So the team are actually not sure on how to bring that all together. And the data has issues with it that we need to address. So what we need to do is we need to first break down what the team actually want. So what they want to know. Now, the first thing they want to know is this: which area has the highest number of volunteers? Because if they can see where the support is the strongest, they'll know where to focus their outreach efforts. Number two, which campaigns generated the most impact? So the team want to know which sessions got the most public engagement. So things like tree planting and school visits and things like that. So that's going to help them scale their efforts, and it's going to also let them see which activities need more attention. Question number three is, what is the overall sentiment towards their cause? They've been collecting feedback and sentiment scores from the local areas. And what they want to do now is they want to know whether people feel confident or skeptical about any of their efforts, because that's going to tailor how they handle any future campaigns they'll take on. Number four, how many volunteers failed to show up? Now, the only reason why they want to know this is because they just want to understand whether location, time, or other factors are influencing people turning up. And that's going to give them opportunities to figure out solutions that are much more convenient for the volunteers without actually diminishing their impact. And the final question is, how many missing values and duplicates were found in the source data sets? Now, the team understand that the way they're collecting data right now isn't the best approach. So they just want a clear snapshot of the data quality so that they can see how bad the data actually is. Now, what kind of format will help them the most? So before, they were working with 50-page PowerPoint slides just to know half of all of this. So now they want a single dashboard that's clear and simple. And it's going to be something that they can open up in Excel. And they just want a few visuals on it, and it has to be easy to scan in less than 10 seconds. So let's look at the data to see what columns can help us with this project. Some of the things that you want to look at is how many records we have in both data sets and whether there are common fields that we can match between them and which fields are incomplete or inconsistent. So this is the volunteers data set, of course. And as you can see, we have volunteer ID, we've got the full name, email, we have region, and the campaign ID. So that's a potential join right there. And we've got the sign up date, as well as the feedback, sentiment score, and attendance status. So each of these columns are going to be useful in answering the questions that the team want us to answer. And of course, we've got the second data set. So this is the campaign ID, the campaign name, we've got dates, locations, activity type, and the volunteer ID. So both data sets have a volunteer ID and a campaign ID. So these are potential columns we can actually join the data sets on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this sheet because we want to preserve the original data set inside the volunteers data. So I'm just going to right click it and then click on move or copy, and then make sure volunteers is selected, and then click on create a copy and then click OK. And then I'm just going to name this, let's call this volunteers data quality scan, something like that. The first thing I want to do is I want to check if there are any duplicates inside this data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new column. I'm going to call this duplicates check key. And because this is already a table, it automatically added this into, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in equals, and then I'm going to actually create a unique key. So, and this unique key will be made up of the email column, the campaign ID column, and the sign up date column. And that should give us a unique signature so that I can find out whether there are any duplicates or not. So I'm just going to select the email and then use the and sign. Do the same for the campaign ID and then use the and sign again. And then do the same for sign up. Then hit enter. Then let me just expand this a bit. So now it's created a bunch of non-human readable values. So remember, this is just to identify any duplicate entries in our data set. What I can now do is I can now create another column that's a duplicate flag column. Let me just expand that. I'm going to now use the if function to help me identify whether this key is a duplicate or not. So if this key appears more than once, then we want to return the term duplicates. Otherwise, then it's fine. It's a unique key. So I'm going to use if, and I'm also going to use the countif function. So the countif function is only going to count values that meet our condition. I'm going to select the entire range for my duplicate check key. And that's going to be the first argument in the countif function. The second argument is just going to be the key in the row I'm currently in. And then I'll close the countif function. And then I'm going to use greater than 1. We want to find out if this key appears more than once. And then hit comma. If you do find out this key appears more than once in our data or in the range that we've given you, then I want you to tell me this is a duplicate. If not, then we'll say unique. It's unique. Okay, so that's unique. Our first duplicate is actually right here. And what I can do is I can use conditional formatting to just highlight all the duplicates. So if you want the shortcut for this, it's going to be Alt HL HT. And then I'll type in the word duplicates. And then it's going to highlight all of them in light red. Every time the word duplicate is found, highlight that in red. So we can easily identify which ones are duplicates and which ones are not. The next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to now check for any missing values inside the data set. So specifically for now, we're going to limit this to the emails. So we want to find out if there are any missing emails inside our data set. And as you can see, there are. But the question is how many? So that's what we want to find out. I'm going to type this missing check. I'll just call it that. And then I'm going to now use the if function. And then I'm going to select email. So if email is equal to blank, so I'm going to use double quotes. And this just represents blank. So if there's nothing inside it, I want you to return the word missing. Otherwise, return OK. And then I close that. And then it automatically fills all the cells below it. I'm going to also use conditional formatting for this. So Alt H L H T. And I'm going to type in the word missing. If it's missing, mark it red. So it's just easy on the eyes. Ooh, I probably don't want to highlight that one. So I'm just going to undo that and then do that again. And type the word missing. There we go. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to now create a table for the data quality summary. So I'm inside cell O1 and I'm just going to type in data quality summary. And then I'll expand that a bit. And then I'm going to just merge and center so that it takes up both O and P. But let's just zoom into it for a minute. Volunteer records. Then I'm going to use count A. Then I'm going to go into the first column with our volunteer ID. And then just hit OK. So we have 420 records inside our volunteers data. And then what we're going to do now is find out how many duplicate records exist inside this data set. So I'm just going to type in number of duplicates records. And then type in count if. And then I'm just going to go to the duplicate flags, select all the values inside duplicate flags. And then In the second argument, I'm going to type in the word duplicate because I only want you to count every single cell that has the word duplicate in it. Hit enter. And then we've got the number of duplicates, which is 37. So that is quite a lot. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to now find out how many emails are missing in this data set. So I'm going to type in number of missing emails, and then we'll follow a similar process. So we're using the counting function once again, and then we'll go into missing check. Or what we can do is we can go into the email field itself if you want, if you prefer the hard way. So in the second one, just add in 2 double quotes, and there we go. We have 13. And then we can also find out how many unique campaigns, let's say, exist. So let's do account A. And then we're going to use the unique function. So this is going to highlight every single unique value inside a range. So I'm going to give it a campaign IDs. So it's going to count how many unique campaign IDs exist inside this data set. So I close the unique function and then I close the count A function. And we have 10 unique campaigns. Awesome. I'm going to select all of that and then wrap it with borders. So Alt HBA. And then I'm going to just highlight that in silver because it makes it look polished. And then if you want, you can bolden that. And there we have it. This gives us a very quick health check on our data, and we'll check if there are any issues later on. But this is going to be useful to the team behind the environmental campaigns. They can have an idea of how messy the data is, and they can come up with solutions around how to reduce these issues. Before we get into any of the fun stuff, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the IDs actually match. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new column, and I'm going to call this campaign lookup. This is where the XLOOKUP function comes in. So I'm going to call the XLOOKUP function, and then let me just zoom out a little bit. Let me get out of this very quickly. Let's just zoom out a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now call the XLOOKUP function. My first argument in the XLOOKUP function is going to be the campaign ID inside the volunteers data, or in this case, the volunteers data quality scan sheet. Now, I'm going to take this campaign ID and then I'm going to go into the campaign's data sheet. And then I'm going to try and search for that campaign ID inside this range that I've just selected. And that's going to be my second argument. Now, the third argument is the data I actually want. So in this case, I want all the campaign names because that's going to make it easy for me to know which campaigns are linked to that campaign ID. So I select all the values in the campaign name column, and then I can close that and then hit enter. And as you can see, now we know which campaigns each of the volunteers in this data set have participated in or are linked to. If there were any NAs popping up, that would mean there's a data issue somewhere, and we'll probably need to raise that with the team. But from the looks of it, it looks fine. So we don't need to do any of that. So that's pretty much our EDA done. So we've done the exploratory data analysis. We have a feel of what columns exist, what issues are inside our data. We're in a good position to start preparing the data so that we can start building the dashboard. Before we actually go into building the dashboard, what we need to do is we need to first remind ourselves of the questions we need to answer with our dashboard. These are the questions we need to answer. So we need to start creating visuals that would answer each of these questions that you can see right there. And each of the visuals we select, they have to be able to answer these questions in a clear and effective way. So you don't want a situation where you have a visual and even though it does answer the question, it's not clear to the user, or you force the user to use their cognition to break down what the visual is trying to tell them. So we want to make the experience easy for them. What I've done is I've actually created the wireframe already. And this contains each of the visuals that we plan on using inside our dashboard. So for question number one, which areas have the highest number of volunteers? We can use a bar chart, and what it's going to do is it's going to show which regions had the highest engagement rates and success. And then for question number two, which campaign generated the most impact? Once again, we can use a bar chart because it's going to make it easy to compare the impact side by side. For the third question, what is the overall sentiment towards their cause? Because that's going to be the public's thought about the cause, we can once again use a bar chart. Question number four. So we can actually use a donut chart, and that's going to display how many people actually attended versus how many people didn't. And the final question, how many missing values and duplicates were found in the source data sets? So that one's an easy one. That's going to be KPI cards or scorecards. Let me actually show you what the wireframe for this looks like. And as you can see, this is the wireframe. So this contains the visual layout of what we're about to build. So as you can see, we have the volunteer impact title at the top. We have the KPI scorecards to the left, and we've got the top campaign by sentiment score to the top right. And then we have the public sentiment in the middle. How many volunteers attended versus how many didn't show up? That's going to be the middle right. And the bottom, we've got the region with the most volunteers. I'm going to show you how to build that. So I hope you're ready. We're going to first prepare the data so that we can actually create the dashboard. So I'm actually going to copy this once again. I'm going to select volunteers. I'm going to select create a copy. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to call this clean volunteers. I'll just call it that. So this is the data we're going to be cleaning up. So I'm just going to, perhaps I'm going to move this all the way to the left. And then let me just move that back somewhere here. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is remove duplicates because thanks to our data quality summary, we now know there are 37 duplicates. So I'm going to select this entire data set, and then I'm going to hit remove duplicates by pressing Alt-AM. So let me just expand this very quickly. So I'm going to select all the columns except for sentiment score and feedback. And then I'm going to click OK. And now our duplicates are gone. So if you want, you can actually do a quick check on that. So if I also just do, if I just type in quick duplicate check, and then I just select the email, campaign ID, and sign up date. So I just concatenate them. And then just expand that. And then HLHD to highlight all the duplicates. And there is nothing. All the duplicates are gone. I'm just going to get rid of this. Let me just delete this entire column. We don't need it. We want to now create a flag that highlights all of the missing entries inside our email column. I'm going to create, let's call this email status column. And then I'm going to follow a similar process to what we did for the data quality check. So if email equals blank, then return the word missing. Otherwise, return the word okay. So let me just filter that. Let's see if this worked. And as you can see, we've managed to highlight all of the missing emails. So we are on the right track. So the last thing you want to do is assume you know what emails should go into the blank cells. Just flag the emails, flag the empty emails, and then send your findings to the data owner and let them handle that with their own source data. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to now create helper columns. The first thing I'm going to do is create a campaign key. And the way I'm going to create this is by combining the volunteer ID with an underscore and also the campaign ID. Then the next thing I want to do is create an attendance flag. This is going to be useful for our donut chart. So I'm going to use the if function, and I'm going to tell this, if this attendance status equals no show, then I want you to write did not attend. Otherwise, write attended. So this will help us highlight all the volunteers that failed to attend the campaign that they registered for. The final thing I want to do is create the campaign name field. And then we're going to follow a similar process to what we had before when we were doing the data quality checks. We're going to use the XLOOKUP and we're going to select the campaign ID of the row we're currently in. That's going to be our first argument. The second argument will be finding this campaign ID inside the list of campaign IDs inside the campaigns sheet. I know that was a lot to take in. The third argument will be the campaign name field. And we can also add a fourth argument if we want. So the fourth argument will be the error message that gets returned if there are no matches on that. So we can say something like no campaign name found for this campaign ID given, let's say. Okay, so that's our campaign name. So now we are officially ready to build the dashboard. We have everything we need. So let's create a new sheet. We're going to name this volunteer data, or say volunteer impact dashboard. Okay, and then our title, let's name this volunteer impact. And then we want to drag this, let's say, all the way to key one. So from B2 or from B1 to P1. So then we're going to merge and center. And then we want to expand this. So let's expand this all the way to, let's say 38. So the first visual, if you remember, if I just open up the wireframe, it's going to be these scorecards, right? So what we want to do is we want to create our active volunteers scorecard first. So that would require us to create a pivot table for the total active volunteers. So I'm going to open up Excel again, and then I'll go to our clean volunteers sheets, select our entire data set, and then I'm going to create a pivot table. So I'm going to hit Alt NVT, and then I'm going to click on new worksheet and then click OK. So let me just zoom in a little bit. So this is the part where I'm going to just make myself a little bit smaller. Hopefully you guys can still see me. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag the volunteer ID into values. And that's pretty much it. That's all our active volunteers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the sheet. I'm going to click on equals, and then I'm going to go to sheet 8, and then click on the value that we've just created and hit enter. So what I'm going to do as well, I'm just going to name this, let's give this a name. We'll call it pivot tables for now. If I let's create a new total active volunteers. Let's just call it that. In fact, total active volunteers. We can do that. So we just named this pivot table total active volunteers. Awesome. So we're going to drag all of this to, let's say, F9. And then we're going to merge and center. And after that, we're going to expand this, or we increase the font size to, let's say, 72. And then we're going to add a text box right on top of this number so that anyone that looks at it understands exactly what it's about. So go to the insert tab and then click on text box and then just drag it on top right there. And then we're going to call this active volunteers. Then we'll just expand that a bit. So what I'm going to do is just make that smaller. I'm going to go to shape format because I don't want the outline showing. And then under shape outline, I click no outline. And there we have it. Let me just drag that to the top a little more. let's change the color of the text as well to, let's say, see what that looks like. Okay, I think we're on the right track. Sure, let's go with silver. Well, let's try one more time. Let's give this a go. Okay, I'll take that. Let's repeat the same process for the other scorecards. So we have missing emails, we have duplicates to do that for as well. So I'm gonna let me just copy. Let me just copy this, and then let's paste this somewhere there. So this will be emails missing. And remember, this is emails missing from the raw data. Now we need to replace this number with the correct figure. So we're going to create another pivot table. And this time I'm going to click on existing worksheet because I want to make use of this one. And then I'll just paste it somewhere here. I click OK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the email status to rows. And then I'm going to drag the email status again into values. So this is what I'm expecting. So I want the missing emails from this. If I say emails missing, and then if I want, I could simply filter this. If I just click the drop down arrow right next to email status there, and then deselect OK. And then now I have only the emails that are missing. So I go back to volunteer impact dashboard, and then I click on my cell, and then I'm just going to delete all of that. Hit the equal sign, go back to pivot table, and then I click on the value there, and then hit enter, and there we go. Now we know how many emails are missing in our data set. And I repeat the same process for the duplicate. So I'm going to copy this, let's go a few cells down, and then paste that there. And then I'm going to say duplicates found. In fact, what I can do this time, I can now go into the volunteers data quality scan because this is where the duplicate flag exists. So remember, this still has all the duplicates inside it. I've not actually changed anything in this. So I can actually use the number that we found here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now clear all of this, hit equals, go into the data quality scan, and then I'm going to click on this number here. So this is the number of duplicates that we found. And then I hit enter, and there we go. So I don't even need to create a pivot table. I can just use the numbers we found in our data quality summary. And that's all our scorecards completed. So now what we need to do is we need to move into creating our actual visuals. And we're going to start with the top campaign by sentiment score, or the campaign impact by sentiment score. And that's going to be at the top right of our dashboard. So let's create a pivot table for that. So we go into the clean volunteers dataset, and then we create a pivot table in our existing sheet. I'm going to click here. Then we drag the campaign name into the rows section. And then I'm going to drag the sentiment score into the value section. But what we want is we want the average of this. So I'm going to click the drop down next to it, and then click on value field setting. And then I'm going to click on average. And then I'm going to click OK. So I want to select all this and change this to, let's say, 2 decimal places so that it's easier to read. And then what I'm going to do is I actually want to filter this to the top 5. So I don't want to see everything. I just want to see the top 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click the drop down in row labels. I'm going to click on value filters. And then I'm going to click on top 10. And then I'm going to change the 10 to a 5 so that we have the top 5 in terms of sentiment score. Now I'm going to go into insert, and then I'm going to actually add a bar chart or a clustered bar chart. Now I'm going to sort this from smallest to largest, and then I'm going to copy this and then paste it into our dashboard. So let me just zoom in a little bit and then just align this with our title. And I'm going to remove all of these filter buttons. So I'm going to go to pivot chart, analyze, field buttons, and then hide all. And then I'm going to get rid of the legend. I'm going to get rid of the grid lines, and I'm actually also going to get rid of the axis. And then let me just quickly name this to top campaigns by sentiment. Then I'm going to add data labels. So I right click, click on add data labels, and then add data labels again. And there we go. So now we have the top campaigns by sentiment. So we're going to create another bar chart. But this time we're going to create a vertical bar chart. So let me just show you how to create that. So once again, go to the clean volunteers dataset and then create another pivot table. So we're going to create this inside our existing worksheet. Then let me just find a place to put it. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag the sentiment score in the rows section. And then we're going to drag the volunteer ID into the values section. So don't be alarmed by these numbers. These are actually the sentiment scores. And this is how many people voted for each of these scores. So go to the insert tab and you're going to select the clustered column chart. So let me just copy this and then go to the dashboard and then paste it in. And then I'm just going to make this smaller because we don't want it taking up too much room. So I just want to center it. Let me just make it half the size of the top campaigns by sentiment. And then you know the drill by now. We're going to remove the field buttons, and then we're going to remove the legends, get rid of the grid lines, get rid of the axis, and then we're going to name this how the public rated the course, or the cause. Say 1 to 5. Okay, let's also add data labels. That's that one done. So we need to now include how many volunteers actually attended versus how many didn't attend their registered campaigns. Let's go back to our data, create another pivot table. So let's just put this here for now. So for this, we've created an attendance flag. So let's drag that to rows. And then we're going to drag volunteer ID into values. And then we're going to go into insert tab, and then we're going to create a donut chart. Now I'm going to copy this, then go into our dashboard. Let me just align this as well. Let me just confirm they're all aligned. We'll take that. And then we're going to remove the field buttons. We're going to get rid of the legends. Then we're going to say attended versus no show. Now let's add data labels to this. Or actually, let's add data callouts. Let's do that. Then we'll just drag them away from their slices. I'm just going to give it a bit more room. Okay, and that's that. So the final thing we want to do is we want to now include all the volunteers across all regions. This is what we're going to do, right? We're going to create our final pivot table. Let me just specify that. And then we're going to drag the region into rows, the volunteer ID into the values. And then we're going to insert a vertical bar chart. So I'm going to copy this, go back to the dashboard. Zoom out. And then I'm just going to just align this a bit. Okay, and then remove the field button, get rid of the legend, get rid of the grid lines, and the axis has to go. And then we'll say volunteer across, or rather volunteers across all regions. So if I just zoom out a little bit, it's beginning to form into the dashboard we expect it to. So I just need to, let me just have a look. Well, I mean, I suppose we can just expand this a little bit. Let's just give it a bit more room to work with. So what we need to do is we first need to wrap the volunteer impact title with orders, and then we'll do the same for the scorecards. So we can't leave it like this, but what I want to do is I want to now channel focus to the key insights in the dashboard. So I'm actually going to first change the color of each of the visuals. So we're going to make sure that we're using green and maybe red for the attendant, for the attended versus no show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the bars in the top campaigns by sentiment chart, and then I'm going to click on the bucket and then click on fill. And then I'm going to change this to, let's give this a light green. So I'm going to select that. And then the top bar will have a dark green fill so that we're driving the emphasis around that, just like that. And then we'll do the same for these ones. So every other bar will get a light fill. And then the highest ones will get a darker fill. And that's going to draw focus towards the highest ratings inside this chart. We'll do the same for this one. So we'll just keep it the same color for consistency. Let's see if this works. Okay, let's change this to red. What does that look like? That's actually right. Let me see what happens if we try. Actually, yeah, we'll keep this. So the emphasis, if you see that, I've actually made this a lighter green. That means that we're drawing attention to the volunteers that didn't attend. And that's deliberate. Okay, and we'll do the same for this. And that's that's the coloring done. So the final thing we need to do is just remove the grid lines and the formula bar. In fact, let me just round off with, perhaps we can color this as well, actually. Let's go to home and that's our dashboard completed. So I'm actually going to leave this dashboard in the link in this video description. So if you want to find it, then you can find it on my GitHub. And I hope you enjoyed today's lesson.